We're rolling.
Hi, welcome to Obscuria Filmcast. Please click and subscribe and be a part of our fan base and interact with us on YouTube and on Instagram. You could find us there. This evening's episode is my favorite film of all time. It's Clue from 1985. I literally have seen this movie over 100 times, well over 100 times, and I'm not kidding. It was one of those movies my mom taped off a TV with a VCR, and every Saturday morning after Saturday morning cartoons were over, I would put in Clue and watch it every Saturday for the entirety of my childhood, basically. And then it kind of fell out of my life. And then a few years ago, I was kind of depressed. So I went into Best Buy's website, found out which Best Buy in New York had Clue, called the guy up, said, "Do you have it? Is it there?" He said, "Yes." I drove on down there, paid $5.12 for this DVD. And when he put it in my hand, I was just like fist pumping for a second. I'm like, yeah, I got it. Meanwhile, the cashier went behind the counter just watching me, waiting for me to actually buy the thing. Anyway, and so I got it there and I would watch it before I would go to bed. Not the entirety. I would put it on and I would fall asleep in the morning, put it on, getting ready for work. And then I would do that for a while. When I get serious about a girl in a relationship, I sit her down and I make her watch Clue. And I'm not kidding. So this movie is one of the most I just think it's funny, and I rewatched it again for this thing and I still I laughed a lot. It's hysterical to me. I love it, and the performances were amazing. What makes this movie obscure is that it is adapted from a board game. There's not many movies like that around, and if they are, they're Super Mario Brothers or horror films. That's basically it. Clue is the outlier where it's a zany Mel Brooks-ish type of comedy. But Jonathan Lynn, I think he's British. Anyway, yeah, and and he also did My Cousin Vinny. So that's why I chose Clue. I have it on DVD, and it was a kind of a flop. The budget was 15 million, and the box office was 14.6. One of the main dudes for this was Jonathan Lynn's first movie. He wrote and directed it based off of John Landis's idea, and he was famous for he directed the Thriller video, Trading
Animal
Places,
House.
Animal House, American Werewolf in London, Beverly Hills Cop 3, Coming to America. He had a bunch of hits, and this was one of his few flops. So it was just about time that I gave this, put this in the mix here. And Tim Curry's performance in this, it's masterful. Even the idea of it. Anyway, okay, so that's my thing. All right.
So tell us a little bit about the film, the structure, and the plot.
The film takes place basically in like 99% of it takes place inside this house. And everybody shows up to this dinner party and they're asked to use their aliases. And they all find out through conversation that they're all being blackmailed. And they were all came there to confront their blackmailer and make this, make the financial obligation justify to end this, to end the blackmail. Then they find out that there was a guy there, and he's like, Wadsworth is the butler who arranged this meeting, and the blackmailer is a man named Mr. Body. So, but Mr. Body shows up with weapons, and he hands them all out to 6 guests, and they each have a lethal weapon. And then Mr. Body shuts the door, turns off, he shuts the door and says, the only way that everyone here gets out alive without going to jail, the only way that everybody gets out of here without going to jail is to kill Wadsworth now. And he turns off the lights, and then chaos ensues. And I just think it's just fascinating and a masterful script, because there's literally 3 endings. You could watch the movie and you could put it together yourself 3 different ways to me, that's amazing. I saw Jonathan Lynn once at a film forum because they were going to play this movie on the big screen. I went down there with my DVD. I saw him sitting there, but I was too chicken to actually ask him to sign it. When around celebrities, I kind of flip out, so I just stay away. Anyway, I watched it again, but during his talk, he said that the dialogue took him 3 weeks to write the dialogue. And it took him 8 months to write everything else. And he said he had the board game there, and he was trying to work out how to do what and where to do everything else. Not only that, the story is very loyal and faithful to the game. Because they even say it's like, I killed Wadsworth in the hallway with the revolver. They say it. So that's basically the thing. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about it.
All right, I guess I'll go first.
Abram, I'm kicking it to Abram here.
All right. Well, so if I had seen this film before, I saw it maybe when I was a child. I have vague recollections of it being on in the background or something. So this was essentially, for all intents and purposes, this is the first time I've ever seen this film.
Wow.
And I only watched it once. And so I didn't have the benefit of like going back and actually looking to see if the structure of those alternate endings actually works, if the person who was accused of doing the murder in the first ending was actually not present in the scene where they were supposed to be, all that stuff. But I'm assuming that everything was worked out well, and that there's a lot of detail, and that's really cool. I was mostly taken by the style of the whole thing and the humor, and it all reminded me of Mel Brooks, particularly Young Frankenstein. It seemed like a lot of there was a lot of shtick that was borrowed from Mel Brooks, but I thought it was done pretty tastefully. I thought, the movie was really
physical
well
comedy
made.
too.
Yeah, a lot of physical comedy, a lot of sexual comedy. It had a really cool vibe to it. I mean, it's like I can see why it's the type of movie that you want to watch over and over again. It's almost like visiting with a really cool family of friends or whatever. It's like having yeah. And I totally get why it holds that special place for you, especially since you were exposed to it at such a young age. And overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I would see it again. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any complaints about it. I could pick apart little things, but overall, it's not a serious movie. It's totally unique. I mean, the idea of making a film based on a board game and then being faithful to the board game, that's pretty awesome. And I would say that
it made sense.
Yeah, and as unusual a film as it is, the fact that like it almost broke even is, I'd say it's pretty good. Like, because it's not, I can see that this film having a struggling to capture an audience in 1985. It's totally different from all the other kinds of movies that were coming out at that time.
Oh, and if I may add to that, the movie does have 3 different endings.
Yeah, 3 different endings.
When it was released, each ending was in a separate location in the country. So if you're on the West Coast, the murderer was this. If you're in the Central, the murderer was these. And the filmmakers thought that would create buzz, but it didn't, because internet wasn't a thing then. And so people, because it is like 96 minutes or 90 minutes without the credits. So you're almost kind of cheated out of 10 minutes by only getting one ending, so there's that. So seeing all 3, and then you really see the masterwork of the script, that all 3 endings do fit. I just wanted to add that.
So did we never see all 3 endings until it was released onto VHS or whatever?
Correct.
Okay, that's pretty astounding. I mean, but in retrospect, it seems absurd that they did that. But
Yeah.
if you think about like 1985, like you said, I mean, and nobody had ever attempted anything like that before, to my knowledge. This is the first and last I've heard of such a thing, with alternate endings being featured, with different alternate endings in different cinemas around the country. You know, it's a quite a novel concept. So I got to give it like you know, just a lot of props just based on the novelty and creativity of the whole concept.
Right. I hear Seth doesn't like it.
I didn't say that I didn't like it. Did I say I didn't like it?
Well,
Yes.
Seth, tell us.
It's the best movie based off a board game I've ever seen in my entire life, and it's way better than
Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
By the way, guys,
think of a
for
world.
any of you guys out there who are confused, Super Mario Brothers is not a board game.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
video.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
just
he's
saying
right.
it's better
You're
than
right.
other game movies. Except maybe movies like about an actual game that's in sports. But outside of that, any game that you play, this is the best movie.
The only movie.
Man, you could
Well, it's
not
the
like
best.
the movie. It's okay.
It's the best
All right.
one.
I think you're lying.
And here's the thing. Imagine a world where this was a hit. There would be a Game of Life movie. There would be Foursquare. Here's this diagonally.
Double
Monopoly.
Trouble. Remember Double Trouble?
Double Trouble. Sorry.
Where's
Top
Candyland?
Candyland.
Legoland movie. Oh yeah, everyone. That's it. So anyway, I didn't play Clue as a kid. So I think that people probably thought this was a kids movie. Did they?
Yeah.
Is there any information that they got sabotaged by the studio in advertising it? Do we know that?
No.
No. Okay, because I'd love to see that, because this movie is so ahead of its time. This movie is like when they do the end of Game of Thrones and they're afraid people are going to get it, they write alternate endings and they put them out on the internet or tell people with big mouths and spread false information. They do that with Star Wars. They do it with a bunch of stuff. In fact, they changed Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, because it got out that Leonard Nimoy was going to die. So they kill him in the simulation in the beginning. And they're like, oh, that's what must have happened. And it got all the fans calmed down, and then Spock dies. So anyway, but that's another movie, which is not obscure. Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, see it. The performances in this movie are brilliant. All the actors are great. They have decent pedigrees as far as their training. Actually, Leslie Ann Warren, I believe, is still the youngest woman to get into the Actors Studio at 17.
Oh, wow.
There's a boy who's younger. But I wish that they did even more as the individual actors with their character. That's my only thing. Like and this is my other thing about it. I did see it when I was young, and it left very little impression on me. I saw it last night, and I was in the subway, and I'm like, you know those films that you think about all the time? This isn't one of them.
I agree. No, I agree. He's right. It's not deep.
Sean never told me the story about him, but I thought, wouldn't this be a great movie to be stuck in a cabin with a VHS and only this? That's what I thought when I watched it. And I didn't know that. That was your story. So it was that I really liked. And it makes sense.
Yeah,
And
you know,
I
I think there's something about Tim Curry.
he's so good in this movie.
He is the movie, just like he is the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I feel like only a guy like Tim Curry could create a movie that people like dress up and go to the theater to watch and reenact. And I think Clue, like Rocky Horror Picture Show, could very well have been one of those cult films where they played in Chelsea every weekend, just like they still do with the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where people are filling in the lines for the characters. I mean, it's not quite on the level of Rocky Horror Picture Show in terms of that, but it has some of those qualities to it, which I don't know if it's Tim Curry or if it's just a coincidence, but there's that guy has something that no other actor I've ever seen has.
Yeah,
He
he's
has
the
an
quarterback.
ability to captivate. You just want to like, he draws you in,
Mhm.
you know, he's like a, yeah, he's impossible to ignore.
Yeah, he's like a star quarterback on a
Yeah.
football team in this movie. He drives the whole movie. The things he does with his eyes in close-up shots are amazing. And like Jonathan Lynn's script, when you told me that, the dialogue is brilliant. He wrote for Yes Minister, which I think,
Did he?
yeah, I think that was his big break. And my friend Anna Judy knows him too. Rob Clare, I think, knows him from working on Yes Minister.
Before we get
And-
a lot deeper into the back and forth, I really want to hear what Judy has to say,
Go to
her
Judy.
impression.
Oh, I didn't even have to watch the film. I did watch the film the other night, but I have very, very fond memories of Clue. It was on my list as well. And one of my biggest memories is we used to go to the VHS store. My mom would take I was born in the 80s, and we would go to the VHS store on like a Friday or something to get a video for the weekend to watch. And I just remember several times, and I don't remember my first experience watching Clue, but I just remember getting my shoes on and my mom like turning around at the door and being like, and we are not getting Clue again. It was like, she was just like, I'm tired of paying for it. I'm tired of seeing it. We're watching something different. So I probably I should have asked her how many times we must have rented that movie, but she was just like, I'm not paying for it anymore. You're getting something new. But I remember being like, oh, because like we probably would have watched it again. So for me, it has, and I was also thinking too, I used to love those choose your own adventure stories that you read as a kid, where you're like, oh, let me go back to that page. I want to choose the other thing. And so the movie has something. And Sean, when you were mentioning about, I wonder what the experience of watching the movie without the alternate endings would have been. I don't think it would have had the same effect. Not that I would have disliked the movie, but there was something exciting where like you hear the story and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And then they're like, but what if? And then you're like, wait, what? And it just sort of, I think it's that like, I like puzzles and I like storylines and characters. And yeah, it's just got those great lines. And yes, it's not like a deep film, but I like that. I've never been a huge fan of like the Oscar movies where you have to tell this like deep story about like the Holocaust or someone switching their gender or something, like to make an Oscar winning film. Like there's
The Danish girl, yeah.
Psychopaths, also psychopaths and cancer.
Yes,
And,
yeah, all of the above. Yeah.
Alzheimer's.
Psychopaths, cancer, and the Holocaust.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd have another Oscar winner played by, Kate Winslet. But I believe that filmmaking, as Sean alluded to, is not just about these like in-depth stories that are supposed to be like these tearjerkers and provoke thought for weeks. But there's some great movies that you just turn on when you're stuck in the cabin or when you're with your friends or when you're depressed, like when I went through something, I watched something because I just needed to like escape and just enjoy a laugh, something that was a little bit dark, and I think that that's the purpose of filmmaking a lot of times. I think people don't look at that. That's why they always overlook comedy and horror, but those are hard to make. So I give them a lot of credit.
I would almost go as far as to say, if it's a serious film, it has to have some horror or comedy or some other has to have something kind of like whimsical about it. Or else what are you doing? You're just watching like a reality TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah, there needs to be some sort of spin. The old actor studio director, Joe Chaikin, who worked with Sam Shepard a lot, he always said that he would always go to the cast before a performance and say, hey, a homeless guy is in the audience tonight. And then he would leave. And the next night he would say, hey, the Queen of England is in the audience tonight. So, do your best. And then he would leave. He would just give everybody at least an iota of a focus. All
Yeah.
of them have the same focus, and they can get into their characters. You could get too much into your character, though. You know, you do need a focus because an audience is watching it within real time. You know, uh, but I actually was on the subway once, and I was talking to my girlfriend at the time here, like this, and I was hearing a voice, and I couldn't concentrate on what she was saying because I knew that voice. And I turn, and it's Michael McKean, who played Mr. Green with his lovely wife. By the way, the man is 8 feet tall. His legs were sticking out halfway through he's a
Was he
giant man.
Lenny or Squiggy? He was Lenny, right?
He was, I forget.
Fine.
But he was,
Fine.
yeah, right. He's from Happy Days.
Not Happy
I
Days, the other
forget.
one. The other one.
Oh.
Laverne and Shirley, the spinoff.
Oh, Laverne and Shirley. All right, I couldn't.
Lenny and Squiggy,
Yeah,
the two guys who lived together and always had their arm around each other.
yeah, and like the jackets. And I turn to him like I go, Mike, and he turned to me. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh wow, I don't know. I didn't know what to say, you know, because I didn't want to flip out because I flip out with celebrities. So I just wanted to just be like, hey man, I'm just a big fan. I've seen Clue, and I was going to tell him how many times I saw it, then realized I would make an ass out of myself. So I said, I just saw it a bunch of times, and I showed it to her when I got serious with her, and she was there, and I turned to him. So I just want to say I'm a big fan. And he's like, okay. I told you it wasn't me. He said that as in the catchphrase for Clue. I told you it wasn't me, but that's not what he says. He says, I told you I didn't do it in the movie. But whatever. He got his own catchphrase wrong. But still, thank you, Mike.
How many years later
really
was
remember.
this? How many years later from 1986?
Oh, this happened in 2014-ish.
Okay.
So,
Well, he's
yeah.
no Carrie Fisher. She knew all her lines
Did you
forever.
really?
Yeah.
Bless her,
But-
bless her heart. I just saw that. I just saw that too.
People would stop her and want to do scenes with her, and she would entertain that.
So here's something that I noticed again now that I'm really looking at it. The costumes for everybody, as they all show up, they are all in their different colors. I like it how Miss White was in all black. I dug that. Madeleine Kahn, and she played it kind of hoity, which I really enjoyed. But as the movie went on, they kept on. The men took off their jackets. Untied. Probably Professor Plum unties his tie. Miss White takes off her hat. Miss Scarlet's shawl is off. Mrs. Peacock's thing got onto the side. Oh, and one last, I just dig all that. Did you guys get into that too? And as I'm saying that, I'm just realizing something that I have a thing for French maids, and I think that's because of Yvette. I really do. I mean, oh, okay, I'm not alone. All right, good.
they
Because I
all-
was looking.
Do French maids all dress like that?
They do on the Benny Hill show.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
No maid looks like that.
It was like, I think that's why I have a thing for French maids, because they didn't have too many boob jokes, and the one, which was kind of cool. I think they only had 4, which is all right, but there was that. Oh God, I'm just thinking of it now. But I just saw that just one focus that they had of just, the costumes getting like derobed, except for Mr. Green. He didn't actually derobe at all. I think that's because he was carrying a gun like the whole time. But like the first ending was Mrs. Peacock. She killed everybody because she thought that the cook was leaking secrets because she was taking bribes because she was a senator's wife. And the second one, it was Yvette killed 2 people, then Miss Scarlet killed Yvette. And then the third one is that everyone killed somebody except for Mr. Green, who wound up being an FBI agent.
And that the guy
And he
behind
killed
everything was actually Mr. Wadsworth.
Right.
Butler was
Wadsworth
actually
was
the
Mr. Body. He goes,
Mr. Body.
"Poor Mr. Body." That's right. I can't even
Okay,
do
but
it. I wish I
my
could.
problem with that ending is then who was the guy who played Mr. Body?
His butler.
Butler.
Okay, so he convinced his butler to pretend to be him for the charade. Like, it
Yeah.
seems, yeah, is that what happened?
Yes. In the diegetic world of the movie, Yes, and it seems weird because in the beginning they had that scene with the conservatory. It's only glass. He was ready to watch it, and break it, and the dog comes up.
So
And you know
basically, he
what?
double crossed his butler. Like he told it. I mean, we're made to assume that in that final ending that Tim Curry's character, Mr. Wadsworth, was actually the head of the household, in control, in charge of everything, and that the guy in the beginning of who comes in, that they basically worked out an elaborate charade between the two of them, with some sort of with what intention? With the intent
To get rid of Mr. Body's network of spies and informants. It saved him a lot
Right.
of trouble.
Okay.
This is the usual suspects before the usual suspects.
But
He's
it's
the
also
original. He's
Yeah,
the
you're
original
right.
Kaiser Soze.
It's Kaiser Soze. Yep.
It's
guys
Kaiser
are so
Soze.
I just think that's great
Good
because in
insight.
the ending of the Wadsworth ending, in that ending, the whole story opens up. And he has this network of spies and informants. He's kind of like Ferris Bueller as an adult. If Ferris Bueller was evil, because the one thing that's cool about Ferris Bueller, he's well connected. Everybody knows him. He's a nice guy. He could get you favors, but the evil one. So I see Tim Curry in another movie doing all this shit and whatever else. And then he's like, I got to get rid of all my, and he thought of it in his head. That's like Benjamin Linus from Lost level of conniving. It just opened up the story so much. I was amazing.
Well, that's another.
I just saw it again.
That's an interesting perspective on this film, because we think of it as like a murder mystery or a crime drama or some weird movie based on a board game that's never been done before. But it's actually kind of like a
It's a
con
Sherlock
job.
Holmes novel.
It's a con job. It's a Sherlock Holmes novel, and it's a con artist. It's like one big long con, and you don't find out what the con is until the very end.
Yeah, there's a master criminal in Sherlock Holmes named Moriarty. And that's sort of the archetype for the English master criminal who like sits behind in the shadows.
Professor. Yeah. Professor Moriarty. Professor, because he's smart.
Professor too, yeah.
Because he's smart, yeah, and all that stuff.
So
And he's just interconnected.
Curry is a really underrated actor. Not by his fans, but his popularity should be like
He's
Oscar level.
Can I tell you something? There was this sitcom that lasted a season called Over the Top, nothing to do with the Stallone film, and it starred Annie Potts and Tim Curry, and it's on YouTube. And I saw like the first half season just to see Tim, and he is funny. The show wasn't good, but he was funny. But I think he had a stroke and only the left side of his face works now or something. I remember seeing him he was a criminal. He was a killer in a Criminal Minds episode, and I like that shit. So was Mark Hamill too. He was a killer in a Criminal Minds. That was a good one. But also this was 1985. The next year was 1986, where Tim Curry played Darkness in the fantasy cult film Legend, starring Tom Cruise and Mia Sara. He played
Also
he had
an
the horns.
obscure film.
Also, that is
an obscure film.
So he had all this range. I mean, I liked it. There wasn't many fantasy films back then. But that was like another thing.
And what year did he do it?
It was 1990.
He was
1990.
He was the original
Also-
Pennywise, and he scared
And also,
the
go
fuck out of
ahead.
everybody. Yeah.
He did. He was
people-
one of the scariest things. Funny,
Yeah.
funny you mentioned that because he auditioned for Judge Doom in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Robert Zemeckis said that he went with Christopher Lloyd because Tim Curry was too creepy.
I can see that.
Like I would
There's
have loved to
something
seen.
Yeah. No, I was
There's
just
a
gonna say
doddering
there's something.
warmth to
Yeah, there's
Christopher.
something about him that you can't quite figure him out, and it's in his eyes. He's just you're like, I don't even know. It's beyond like hard to read. There's just like there's something, it's like he's very good at playing very layered characters. You can't quite like look at his eyes and go, going out. So it can come off as creepy. And then if he plays it creepy, it's super
He's
creepy.
otherworldly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like royal or something. Like you can't look at him for too long.
This is what an actor, like a master actor, used to be. There used to be actors like Stella Adler's father, Jacob Adler, the guy Booth, not the one who shot Lincoln, but his father.
His brother.
I thought it was his father. It was his brother, the one who was
His brother.
great. I thought the father was legendary.
Probably him too. It was a family.
But anyway, these are these actors who, like, every night put on a wig or a beard, like, today I'm King Lear. And then you go another day and he'd have a hunchback. Today I'm Richard III. And they could sing, you know.
Mhm.
Tim could sing.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he's one of those guys.
Yeah. He's an antique. He's a throwback for sure.
Yeah.
Who else is like that? I mean, there's not many. Unfortunately, he's in a wheelchair. He's been in a
Madeleine Kahn.
wheelchair since 2012. He hasn't been doing much live action, but still does a lot of voiceovers apparently.
Yeah.
But he needs the ultimate props because, like, he carried this movie. I mean, it wouldn't have this anywhere remotely the same feeling if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, that's absolutely true because in one of the endings he was a good guy in like two of them, and then he was a bad guy. But even like some of the things, remember when he got that call from J. Edgar Hoover, and he's like, "Why is J. Edgar Hoover calling on your phone?" And he said, "He's on everybody else's. Why wouldn't he be on mine?" Or even, and even when Colonel Mustard said, "How did you know that about Mrs. White's like husband with the work on the nuclear fusion bomb, nuclear physicist?" And Tim Curry leans in and says, "Can you keep a secret?" "Yeah, so can I." And it like gives us this way of like he's never letting anything go, and and you could kind of tell like there's like an undercurrent in there. Of course, it's mainly in like the writing, I guess.
Wait,
but
Sean,
the way that he does it.
When is this film supposed to be taking place? Because it's clearly not.
I think it's 50.
1954.
Like
They
specifically
mentioned
54.
Senator McCarthy. They mentioned the McCarthy
Yeah,
trial.
1954, New England.
Yeah,
In the
they
beginning of
mentioned
the
J.
film,
Edgar
they
Hoover.
show it.
But that's why I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if the film was
1954.
trying to be anachronistic or something.
It's set, if you want to double up, see Clue and Meeting the Ricardos. They're the exact same.
Oh yeah, it's a good point.
And they both have J. Edgar Hoover phone calls in them.
A phone call from J. Edgar Hoover. It sounds like a punk rock song. Abram,
Yeah,
that sounds like a song you could write.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised though that it took place in the 50s outside of those references, just from a style perspective. Because when I watched the movie a lot in the 80s, and I don't know how much I've seen it since then. And then when I watched it the other night and it showed whatever the year was in the beginning of the film, it said like 1954 or something. And I was like, oh, it sort of like caught me off guard, because if you take that away and you watch the film and you say, oh, this was shot it's very timeless in a way.
Yeah, I can
There's
see
no
that.
like hairstyle that's like, oh, that was 50s or 80s, or it's just like you could watch it now and go like, oh yeah, people look like that now.
Yeah.
It's I just was like, oh, that's the 50s. Okay. If you took
I
away
do,
all
yeah,
those-
like Miss Scarlet's dress was pretty hot, actually, yeah.
Mhm.
And even that whole thing, she was like a madam, and she ran
Madam,
a phone service, which I thought was hot. I guess they had that sort of thing back then, and hotel where a man could rent a woman for a short while or something.
Wait,
how she
is it
put
just me, or were they trying to style her and make her look like Susan Sarandon from?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Like
I guess they both got them big eyes.
both have red
Susan
hair.
Sarandon was in Rocky Horror Picture Show
Exactly.
too.
I don't know.
Actually, what I found out here is that Carrie Fisher was originally cast to play Miss Scarlet, but she had to withdraw because she had to enter drug and alcohol treatment. But I just thought that was pretty cool. I got a question for Judy. Judy,
Yeah.
did you notice the directing and how a lot of the comedy in this film is done they shot for the comedy as opposed to having the comedy in the edit, kind of like Arrested Development. But Clue takes, I guess, that Mel Brooks approach by having longer takes and more choreographed blocking to get those sight gags in there. What did you think of that?
I don't know, honestly. I'm like,
I don't.
no, I thought it was great. Sometimes I think, let me rephrase that. Sometimes for me, the line between directing, who did it? Was it the director? Was it the actor? I'm not sure which is which. Seth, what do you think about that question?
I think it relies heavily on its tailoring by the director and the editor.
Well,
yeah.
But take the direction, well, take the editing out of the equation to address but let's say you do for a minute. You take the editing out of the equation and you look at some of these shots that are long.
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about a continuous action. It's almost like this was like a lot of this seemed like choreographed dancing to me. Like it wasn't like, this was a very technically masterful film from the editing and directing perspective, but also from the action perspective. Like you have to get, you have a 2-minute shot where everybody's scrambling around and running around and it's all this physical comedy that has to be seamless from the perspective of the acting. So, I mean, this is like, I would say this is a very technically masterful film from the level of the acting, from the level of the directing, and from the level of the editing. I think everybody deserves equal credit as far as what Sean's bringing up in terms of the style of the the comedic shots.
Yeah,
because it's not like quick cuts. There's not like tons of quick cuts here.
No,
it's a lot of long shots.
But also, I think a good director holds that space for the actors, so they feel safe to go. And I don't know what the rehearsal schedule was like on this for them to test out different things, or if the direction was just so clear and so thought out prior. That's the stuff I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and to give Seth his due, I would suspect, I would guess that there was a tremendous amount of footage shot that they had to do. They had to probably do these many takes. I'm just going to guess, because it just seems very difficult. These are difficult shots to get right the first time. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I can't imagine what it was like shooting this movie. It was probably pretty grueling shooting this movie.
Well, I mean, the fact that it cost $15 million and it just takes place in a house.
In one house.
One house.
Actually, I heard an interview from Michael McKean, another interview from Michael McKean. I forget what show he was on, but they were all like younger folk and comedians. Well, not all of them were younger, but they were all making each other laugh, between Madeleine Kahn and Christopher Lloyd. But Michael McKean said that Tim always would say something before every take, or most every takes, and he said, "Remember, something serious happened here." And then they would roll, and then they would do it. They would all make each other laugh. New setup. They're talking, and it's like, "Wait, remember, something serious happened here." And then they would do it, and because I saw that, because I noticed that too again. Like, why am I still laughing? I'm still laughing at the movie. I think it's hysterical. I could watch it, honestly. If we talk about it some more, I'm gonna want to watch it again. But like, why is that? Because the story is so like steadfast in murder. There's 6 murders.
That tends to be Jonathan Lynn in all of his films.
Let me just say, 5 people died in Hamlet. In Clue, 6 people died. But it's still funny, and how that, and I think it was because it was like, if they all remembered that one of them is the murderer, and they have that in their heads, the comedy comes out more, because the comedy is basically in the blocking and in the writing.
I love this kind of comedy because it's played for truth.
Yes, it's serious. Like, to them, they're serious.
Which is why I want to address the elephant in the room. Even as a little kid, I was always, what's up with Martin Mull? Why does he work so much? He's one of those actors who can only do one character.
Yeah, this is his best movie, but yeah, I understand. He's not that funny.
Everyone else is they're still being very much in the style of what they look like. But there is some affectation, and Martin Mull never does that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he's kind of the weakest link for me. But I know he works all the time, so God bless him. He started as a like sampler with a guitar. He was one of those comedians.
Wait, so was Martin? I don't know Martin Mull that well. Was he always? Is he known as a comedic actor, or character actor, or?
Kind
Comedic
of.
character actor who came out of comedy with that he would do like he was a folk musician. That's
It
what-
was he was in an old show with Fred Willard in the 70s called Fernwood Tonight. That was a talk show, but it was scripted. It was like a Dick Cavett style show, but it was all scripted. And they would do skits and stuff and have weird guests and do skits and like whatever else. And Fred Willard is hysterical. He's funnier than Martin Mull, but I do see what Seth is saying, because then Martin Mull lingered around. He started doing painting. His artwork is actually fascinating. And then he got onto Roseanne in like the last 4 seasons or something. He was on in like season 2, and then he came on
He's
again.
perfect
And like,
for Roseanne. He's
yeah.
absolutely
So
perfect. I think he's a Second City guy.
something like that. Yeah, he's like a Bill Murray type. He's like Bill Murray light, at least back
Not
then.
like Bill
Yeah.
Murray.
back then.
He's like John Belushi's brother Jim. He's not
I like me
Bill
some Jim Belushi. No joke.
Okay, well, before we get too far, let's give our final thoughts. So let's start with Seth. Final thoughts
Well,
before we get to
really
next.
great
time.
technical movie, like watching the gears of a perfect clock. See it with Meeting the Ricardos. It's like the same year, and it's both physical comedy, how grueling physical comedy is, and yeah, it's I think that's all I gotta say. Oh, and Colleen Camp was one of the
Swimming alive.
Playboy bunnies in Apocalypse Now that was cut out and is in the director's cut. She's one of the girls.
And say what? In what movie? I missed it.
Apocalypse
Apocalypse
Now.
Now.
Oh, she's pretty hot. Okay, I'll go next. Final thoughts is that this movie is spiritual. I love the costumes, and if I was ever worth hundreds of millions of dollars, if I not even a millionaire, I would have to be very wealthy. What I would do with that money was build me the house in Clue and live in it. And I'm not kidding. Everything, the ashtray, I want everything how it is, the upstairs, the dining room, the kitchen. I would love to hang out in that kitchen. I would just hang out in the kitchen on a folding chair with a little TV smoking cigarettes. I really would like, so that's my final thoughts, is that this, oh God, everything, I'm going to want to watch it again. Seth borrowed my DVD. I'm going to come over tomorrow and get that DVD so I can bring it back. Okay. Abram, any final thoughts?
Yeah, even after doing this with you guys, after this episode, I'm like even more enamored of it. Like, there's a lot to this movie. If you're into film from a technical standpoint, if you're a movie buff, I think it's an essential movie. Not just for people who like obscure cult films like this. I think this is an essential piece of filmmaking history that has a lot of interesting things to offer. It's a very cozy movie. I want to watch it with my kids. It's like one of those things. I think if I had watched this, if I'd seen it for the first time at a younger age, it would have become like for me what it is for Sean. And it is definitely I can see how like this becomes a movie that has tradition attached to it that people want to pass on to later generations. So yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't really have that much else to say. Very technically masterful, very interesting from the technical standpoint. The acting, it's a great clinic in comedic acting and physical acting. I think it hits all the right notes, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I will definitely see it again.
Mm. Well, I don't have too much to add to that from what everyone said. The only thing I would add is what Sean made me think of when you said you would have someone put together the house for you. And I don't know if you ever guys are familiar with Sleep No More. I don't know if it's happening still in New York City, where it's an immersive theater. And I almost feel like Clue would be a really fun immersive theater experience to sort of like dress up and sort of follow those characters around. And it is, and what I love about it is that it's one of those films where it's not, or at least I don't think, it could just be me, I don't think it's offensive to people. It's something that all different types and ages can watch. I don't know how young I would go. My daughter's 5. I don't think I would introduce it to her yet, but maybe when she's like 8 or 9, maybe. Not so much for little ones, because she still talks about orca and about how whales eat people. So
Yes.
you
Yes.
have
Whales
to
for a reason.
so it's like, do you remember
Orca for the
that
win.
film? He ate the guy. So killer whales eat men. I'm like, okay, no, it's just a movie. Anyway, no, okay. So I let him learn my lesson. So with that, let's have Seth talk about our next film selection.
Yeah, the only way you could get offended by Clue is if you were really into diversity.
It's
and you're like,
2022.
this is such a white
All
movie.
white people.
Well, there's
Even
a
the
black
cook-
cop in it.
The black cop.
Oh yeah, the black cop. Yeah, yeah. That's
Okay.
cool. He's a person of authority, you know.
Yeah.
And why would you let me in? Why in full
All right.
All right, Seth, sock it to us.
We have never done a documentary. I was thinking about Devil Rides Out, but that's a horror movie, folk horror. I was thinking about Witchfinder General, but no, we're going to do a great movie called Private Practices, the story of a sex surrogate. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's for guys who have trouble with women, and they see a therapist, and the therapist goes, why don't you meet with this woman once a week for a couple of sessions until you have sex with her, and then you'll be better.
I
That's
don't,
what
I
this
don't believe it.
documentary is about.
I don't believe you. I don't
And there's a
believe you.
guy named Kipper in it.
Chipper?
He's
Kipper.
a 40-year-old virgin named Kipper.
Kipper.
Okay, Seth, I need the title again, and
What year was it released?
It's from the 80s. Hold on.
it came out in the 80s. Oh my God, this is gonna
It's
be good.
1986. It's called Private Practices, the story of a sex worker. 1985. It was made. It was made. It's probably made even before that because it's a documentary. In 1985, director Kirby Dick, who also did This Film Is Not Yet Rated, which I love, weaves a fascinating study of the curious role of a sex surrogate.
Okay, Private Practices is the entire title, or
Well, then there's a
colon?
colon in it. Yeah.
Colon what? What is it?
Colon, the story of a sex surrogate.
Okay,
The
Private
story of a
Practices. Private
Surrogate.
Practices, the story of a sex surrogate.
Do you know where we can watch it?
Yeah, where can we watch it?
It is on Apple TV. I checked. I don't know if it's in other places, but I know it's on Apple TV.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
If we can't all find it, then we'll do either Devil's Ride Out or
Oh,
Witchfinder.
No,
we'll find it.
I'm sure
No,
it's
we'll
there.
find it. Yeah.
Okay.
You're
Okay,
kidding?
so-
This is
Excellent. Cool.
And I'll be bringing my sex surrogate as a guest. I don't have a sex surrogate.
Anymore.
No, I never have.
I was a mock dater.
this is my
You
this is
can have
my
a
copy of that
surrogate
down.
company.
this is my sex surrogate, baby. I get weird. Nice. I'm sorry, Judy. I interrupted you. I'm sorry. What did you
Oh,
say?
no, it's fine.
Oh,
Judy was
All
a
right,
mock
guys.
dater. I was talking about this last week. No, the other 2 days ago, I was telling this girl, yeah, my friend used to sit there and have a mock date. And my other friend, my boss, really, because he's not my friend anymore, he would take notes.
Mhm.
Take notes. We're friendly. And then Judy would leave. Would you give feedback?
I would give feedback. Yeah.
Let's talk about it next week, because I'm sure you'll have a lot to share.
It's one of those things where if I'm ever having like a conversation and people are like, don't know what to talk about, I'll be like, I used to be a mock dater. And they're like, what? What is
wait,
that?
Judy. So it was like being a patient in a medical school.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah. I would go on like a date.
We needed a mock
Fake
dater,
date.
and I was like, I know
Wait,
someone.
hold on,
who
Judy,
would be
Judy,
perfect.
I know you're a married woman, but who, any of those guys,
Coffee date. No,
no, but
oh, no.
yeah, I know, but any, come on, right? You could.
Not a chance.
Well,
Well,
Yeah.
guys,
One
if you want to
guy-
hear more about
Do it next week.
Judy's
Do it
mock
next week. That's
dating,
all I'll say for next week.
join us
My
next week
history.
for Private Practices, the story of a sex surrogate.